Hello, I just wanted to share a quick walkthrough on getting particles from Houdini to Unreal Engine's Niagara system. I think this is something that's been around for a while now, but I just figured out myself and I thought it was really thrilling and interesting. So this is basically the effect. This is just a basic particle simulation from Houdini. So I want to just walk through this quickly. So the way we did this, or the way this is done, is the first thing we need to do is we need to make sure that we have the Houdini to Niagara plugin installed. So for that, I just went out to the internet and I typed in Houdini Niagara plugin and it brought me to this page. So this is a side effects page, and if I click on that, it tells me how to install it. And they keep it, apparently the latest release of this plugin is on GitHub. So I would click here to where it says download the latest release, and there it is right there. It's a zip file. So we just download that and then unzip it, which will give me, let me grab this. This is off screen here. This gives me, whoops, there we go. Right here. This folder. Then what I need to do is I take this folder, actually inside this folder, there's another one inside of this one. So I'm going to copy that one. I would just right click on it and copy it. And then I need to paste it into my engine folder, not your project folder, but your engine folder. So I have my engine installed on the C drive in my program files and in Epic Games. And there is Unreal Engine 4.26. So if I go in there, there's my engine subfolder, and in here is my plugins folder. So if I go inside there, I can put it's recommended to put it in the effects folder or subfolder. So if I go into effects, there it is. I pasted it in right there. So once you do that, then when you come back to Unreal Engine, you should be able to find it in your plugins. So if I go here from settings to plugins, I should have it under the effects category. Right there it is. And I enable it. And of course, once we enable it, we'll have to restart the engine. And then it should be available. So that gets us ready for the particles coming over from Houdini. So now I'm going to jump over to Houdini. And I just have a basic setup in here also. So what I did is I just used the Pyro, I think it was the explosion shelf tool here on a sphere. That's what I have out here. There's my sphere object. There's my Pyro sim. And then from the Pyro sim, it went into, the Pyro sim, the shelf tool generates a geometry node where it displays it. So this is all pretty basic. In here I made maybe a few changes to the container size and some timing, but this is still basically the shelf tool. Nothing's changed in there. And that gives me, that's just a basic Pyro sim. Oh, the other thing, I'm not sure if I mentioned this, but I also decided that I was going to advect or use the pyro velocity to push my particles. So this, you don't have to, you don't have to have a pyro sim. Anything that you generate particles with, you can use this technique to get it into Unreal Engine. So I just happened to decide that I wanted to advect the particles using a pyro sim. But again, you don't need to do this. You could just build your own particle system and then go through the export steps that I'm going to show in a minute here and get it into Unreal Engine. So that's my Pyro sim. So that gets pushed into here, this geometry node. Right there it is, the .io. And now what I've done is I've added a few things. Here is where I'm actually generating the particles. So what I did is I put down a DOP node here. And in the first input is my sphere. That's the object that the particles, the surface that the particles are originally born from. So that's what this object merge is. You see, that's just bringing in my sphere object right there. That's the same sphere object that was used to generate the original Pyro. So that's why I pulled it in here. I connected it to input 1. And then input 2 is my pyro. That's coming into here. So that's going to bring in, basically I'm doing this to get the velocity of my pyro that I can then apply to the particles. So then in the DOP node, I have, I set this up, I've got, for a pop simulation, we need a pop object. I didn't change anything in there. And then we need a pop source. So in the pop source, under the source type, I said its original source, I wanted to use the first context geometry right there. And under birth, I told it that I only wanted to generate particles up to frame 40. So that's what this expression is. $F less than 40 means that it will constantly birth 5,000 particles up until frame 40, and then it will stop. And I also changed their life expectancy to 2. So each one only lasts 2 seconds. And that's all I changed in there. And then what I needed to do is I needed to tell these particles to be advected by a volume. So if I click here, I now have, I'm sorry, this is the pop advect by volume. This is just a node you can get in here. If we go to pop, is it in here? Pop advect by volume. I don't see it. Well, we know we could just type it in. If I right click in here, I could type in pop. Oh, there it is, right at the top, pop advect by volumes, right there. All right, so now I wire that in, and that I want that to use the second context geometry. That is right here. That's the .io coming from the pyro. So that's why it says second context geometry, whereas this one was the first context geometry, which was the sphere. All right. And then the other thing I did here, I believe this is set to update force by default. I want to update velocity. This is all driven by velocity right there. So I changed that to velocity, and that's all I changed there. And then that's wired into the post solve of our pop solver. And what that does is it gives me what you see here. Now you see I have particles that are taking the velocity of the pyro. So that's sort of a separate piece in itself. That's driving the particle motion through a pyro source. All right, so that's completely different. Again, like I said, getting this into Unreal Engine has nothing to do with pyro. That's just the process I use to move the particles, but this could just be a simple particle system, without being driven by pyro. So then that gives me my particles. So now up here, when I come out of that DOP network, these are my particles. I added an attribute create here for p scale, because this isn't outputting p scale, and particle scale is something I might want to utilize over in Unreal Engine. So I just added that attribute so that I have it available to me in Unreal for whatever reason. And then the last thing we do is we just put down this Niagara ROP node. This is a render operator. And this can be found, this is part of the side effects labs. So you want to make sure you have those installed. So under labs, UE4, is it there? Right there it is. The labs Niagara ROP. That's what this is. And then in here, all I have to do is determine what frame range I want to render. I'm doing 1 to 100. And it's going to output an HP JSON file, just a single file. And this is the file that we can drag and drop into the content browser in Unreal Engine and use it to drive our Niagara particles. And under the attributes to keep, it will have all of these except p scale. So I had to type in p scale there, because remember I generated p scale up here. So I now have that attribute, and I can attach that attribute to each particle also, so that I could change their scale in Unreal Engine if I wanted to. And that's everything I think I need to do here. And then I just hit the render button. And once it's done rendering, it creates that HP JSON file. And in Unreal Engine, I simply just need to drag and drop that in. Right there it is. That's the file. And now what I can do is create a new Niagara system. I'm actually going to remove this one because that's the one I was just showing. And I'm going to create a new Niagara system. So I'll right click in here, go to Effects. This is being cut off, but I'm going to select Niagara System. And I'm going to just choose an empty system right here. And then if I go into that new system, I can now right click to create an emitter. And since I have the Houdini Niagara plugin installed, I should see down here a number of Houdini emitters that I can add in. And if you don't see them, you might have to come to your view options here. Again, this is being cut off, but down here you want to make sure you have show engine content and show plugin content, and then you should see these. And so I'll just choose the Houdini Niagara Basic. And now what it's doing is it's actually using a default. This is actually a point cache. And it's using a default point cache right now called P on surface, particle on surface. So all I need to do is replace this particle cache file with the one I just made. And there's actually 3 locations where we need to put this in, wherever we see point cache. So there's one under emitter update. There's another one here under particle spawn. And then there is one more under particle update. So I'm just holding down the shift key or the control key to select all 3 of those. And we can see them over here. So now I just can drag and drop in my file that I imported, which I think if I can move this around just a little bit, right there it is in the content browser. So I'll just drag and drop, drag and drop, and drag and drop. And now I have my version of my particle cache. Whoops, you can't quite see that. There we go. Let me just bring down I'm going to bring down the loop duration to maybe 4 seconds in the emitter state here so that it loops quicker. There we go. So now you can see I now have my own point cache that was just generated in Houdini right on Niagara particles. So this is now Niagara particles being driven exactly the way they were in Houdini, which I think is just so cool. So I thought I'd just share that with everybody. So I hope that's of interest to other people as well.